tell me your thoughts on placement is real.
Yeah, I mean, I used to when I first started sort of singing more technically, I used to think placement was a load of trying to think of a non-bad word, load of rubbish.
That's all right. I have a swear jar that I
Oh,
use
you do?
For Heidi Moss. I can go and get it out.
Okay. Okay. No, I don't want to. I don't want to part with any cash today, so I'm gonna try real
Well,
hard.
she doesn't pay up either.
No. Oh, okay. So I can do it and just not pay you. That's fine then. Yeah,
Although
yeah.
I did stay at her home. So if you swear it, you might end up with an unwanted visitor.
That's fair enough. But no placement. Yeah, I used to just I used to chuck it away
Mm-hmm.
as being a thing. But then, I was training myself more mechanically, if you like. So if I was thinking about the position of things, I guess at that point I was managing my voice very much more than I was enjoying it. So I do recall those times. And I think when your attention is into management, or if you strain a lot,
Mm-hmm.
or if you actually are very flaccid, let's get back to all these words, you tend to perceive sensation a lot less in a lot of those environments when you're managing, when you're straining, or when you're flaccid. I think at that time it was probably much harder for me to become aware of vibration sensations and the nuances of them. But when I got into more holistic stuff, and that ended up being part to do with resonance, I started to feel things, and that became cool because then I could just play around with that on stage. But what that led me to do then is to start to understand, yeah, but why there? What is it about that? And then it becomes easy to understand because we understand a little bit about vibration felt in the body, and that it actually has its frequencies where you can feel it most strongest, and it has its frequencies where you can feel it very little, like especially
Mm-hmm.
high C for sopranos is very
Mm-hmm.
hard to feel. But when you get down to sort of middle C and sort of slightly above in the passaggio, there's a lot of sensation there possible in the receptors in the
Yes.
skin. So we have that, but then we have reflection points which make it much easier. So when I talk about placement, I use exercises that are from Arthur Lessac and Lessac Madsen Resonant Voice Therapy, but they work on points of reflection. So if I have a round lipped eval, what that does, it puts the narrowest point in my whole vocal tract against my gum and right by the teeth. So as the sound waves funnel themselves through there, lots get
Mm-hmm.
reflected back, but some come through. Obviously, that means that the greatest sensation and concentration of energy is going to be at the narrowest point, which is going to be on my gum. So I'll probably feel something on my gum.
Yes.
That's a consequence of shape. I can't place it there. I have to do the right
No.
shape, you know,
Yes. Yes.
right? So that's how it builds. But the placement, the why placement is real is because if I do that enough, and if I build that out with other reflection points that make it predictable to feel something in somewhere, like against the soft palate, high towards the head, down
Mm-hmm.
towards the chest,
Mm-hmm.
I can use those vibrations to represent the motor pattern in my nervous system. So again, now what I do is I don't manage my voice in parts and pieces and places, but instead that gets deferred to the sensation. So in the end, I ask for the sensation, but not before I've trained that through the shape. So the sensation is just representing the shape. And so that's why some singers have done that without knowing or without a process. They've done it intuitively. So they say they place their voice, but what they've just done is they've represented a shape in a sensation, and now they just aim for the sensation. It's very much like the golfer just goes through the ball. Do they go through the ball? Of course they don't go through the ball. The ball leaves. We know that's just an image, but that going through the ball represents a piece of the motor pattern. It organizes a piece of the motor pattern. And if you don't go through the ball, you use your muscles differently. So I teach singers to represent shapes and motor patterns through sensations. And so then in the end, they just aim for the sensation. It feels like they
Yes.
place their voice, but it's been a process.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why placement is real.
Yes. And it's important too when you're helping a singer that once they get that sensation and their voice is ringing, it's healthy, the sound is sustainable, it's what they're wanting to achieve in tone, that sensation is what helps them replicate that
That's right.
once
And
they leave.
no, it's right. Yeah, on in bad sound on stage, that's how they know. I
Yes.
don't need to push it now, even though I can't hear myself, because it feels just right.
It feels right. And so I will often ask a singer, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling anything? And there's no wrong or right here. It's your body, and you can tell me whatever you think is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, well, then we go from there. But I find that that's really the most helpful way, because sometimes they can't hear the difference.
Mm.
To them, sometimes they'll say, but it sounds the same to me. And I'll say, well, you're hearing something different to what I'm hearing, and that's okay. But are you feeling anything different? Yeah, it feels easier. Great. So what is going on? Where are you feeling any difference within, like, your mouth, your throat, your chest, your head? Like, where are you feeling it? Great. So now you know that is the feeling to aim for.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think it's funny working it in the other direction as well. Is, let's say that you start off with the concept of placement without first training it through shape,
Mm-hmm.
which is how a lot of singers are going to end up when they go on something like YouTube and see, like, try and place your voice here, and there's no detail around it. Where we use shape to generate placement, if you start with placement, your nervous system will try and create a shape that will generate something close to what you're asking for in terms of placement. So it works in the other direction. So if somebody asks their voice to be forward, it's very common for them to become nasal,
100%.
because that's where the sensations, if the sensations are going through the nasal passages, then you're going to get a forward sensation. And then they're going, yes, it feels forward. They're ignoring that it sounds nasal, because
Yeah.
they're achieving placement. And that's why singers get totally wrapped up and wrecked with it, because they're beginning with placement and not understanding that it's a consequence of shape.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Okay, this is a huge one. Our next myth is something that I would say one of the most frequently said things to me, either by a student when they first start, or I've heard other singing teachers saying this: you sing from the diaphragm.
Mm. Yeah. It's just one of those ones that when you probe it with questions, so what do you mean? I mean, so it's very easy. I've seen this so many times for singers to go, well, just, and then they realize, actually, I have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
And so that's how the conversation usually ends up.
Yes.
It's almost like a buzzword. It's like, I just need to say it because it's a singing thing, isn't it? So it's interesting how maybe it's just caught on for that reason, but I don't know. I honestly don't know why it starts, but obviously breathing, if it's felt down there, if the in-breath is felt in the diaphragm.
Yeah. I mean, the
Great.
diaphragm's the major inhalation muscle. So of course it has a role to play, but we don't sing from there.
No. No. And
we,
even on the way out, it's like, what do we...
there's no larynx in there
No.
either.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about placement as well, if somebody's thinking low, it's like if they think about chest voice being in the chest, if they think about the singing from the diaphragm, the thoughts in their mind are all down, which may work well, because as we think lower and lower, it's not unusual for the chin to come down, for the larynx to lower, for the jaw to become lower. And then before you know it, it's like, oh yeah, it does make you sound quite woofy, and it really doesn't work with range. Right? It's like, talk about hitting a ceiling at about F. It's a bloody nightmare. So, cookie jar, swear jar. I know. Come and stay with me. That's it. You've got a free night, one night.
Yay!
Um,
A night for every swear word.
that's it. You'll have a holiday out of this by the end of it.
Yeah, I'll be there for the
Um,
next year.
yeah. And in India, I've worked with a few Indian singers, and they actually, it's very common for them to call chest voice either stomach voice or throat voice.
Oh,
But quite
really?
often it's like, yeah, my stomach voice. So yeah, I noticed that in parts of the world,
Hmm.
the reference to the stomach is actually quite strong when associating it with a strong sound,
Mm-hmm.
right? Calling it stomach voice. So yeah, there's I think it gets very confusing, and who knows how people use it in different cultures and
Mm.
whatever. Yeah.
Maybe they're talking about verbal diarrhea.
Oh, what's in the stomach coming out of the yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Oh, that is so weird, a stomach voice. I've never
Mm.
heard that. Honestly, I think that's a weird one, but hey, each to their own. One thing I can say, I'm not a terminology Nazi.
Hmm.
In terms of like the language my students speak when they first come to me for their lessons, I speak in their language and we gradually start introducing new words because I, like it's not about me, look how much I know. It's about getting them to sing efficiently and healthily and sustainably.
Yeah.
And if it needs the for us to just speak their language, then that's fine. And even I love the 1 to 10 scale. So how loudly, or let's just say, how much effort is that taking for you? 1 means you're flatlining, there's no pulse. And
Hmm.
10, like you're lifting up Mount Everest, like it's a real big effort. And even though I know they're like at a 2 and they're almost flatlining, and they say, that's a 5. Well, I'll say, okay, well, do you think maybe we can give it a little bit more energy
Mm.
and aim for a 7? So it's always what they think is going on and then educate them from there and then introduce all the language and the terms and everything else that they need to know about.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, with effort as well. Sometimes you, after a couple of weeks, they realise that actually I need to recalibrate my idea of effort. Actually, that's not a lot of effort, or
Oh,
that's more. I didn't think that was a lot of effort, but now I felt what's easy. It can all change, can't it? So
mm-hmm.
yeah, I score system with singers all the time. It's really really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Okay, myth number 7. We need to support the voice.
Mm.
Mm.
We need to support. So yeah. It's again one of those strange subjects of semantics is support, sometimes with breath support, let's say, so enough breath pressure or flow or energy to support what's going on at the vocal fold level. So if that's a belted sound, it will be different to being a falsetto, for example. So that's kind of true in that way. It's obviously true, but when it comes to support is something that, again, when we use the words always or never, it always comes a cropper. There's almost never an always, and there's almost never a never, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost. See, I put
Almost.
caveats in there. Caveats.
That's all right.
But
Saves us from being stoned.
yeah, it does.
Let's not be stoned.
No, on the proverbial, yeah, on the judgment of the internet,
Yeah.
but no, it's the support. Always support your voice. It's just what that generates in people is I always have to do something with my body to drive the air to give that voice something to work with. And if
Mm-hmm.
that, how
Mm-hmm.
many times have you seen singers just they're having trouble in falsetto, it's getting blown out, it's tight, and they're like, you have to have the conversation of like, so what are your strategies for this? What are your strategies for that? What do you think about when you're doing this? And
Mm-hmm.
if somebody comes up with, well, I'm always trying to support, it's always like red flag. red flag. We first got to figure out what is your support strategy, and is that even relevant right now? Because some ways of singing just need you to take a breath in, and the rest of it will just be fine, right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
don't need to be
Yes.
thinking about support, and
Mm-hmm.
to over support it will over deliver pressure, flow, air, volume to a register that does not need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so then it becomes a term that gets again just taken out as an always, as a taken as read in singing. And I think with singers, they often don't say these things to us because they just think it's taken as read. So when it comes to teachers or singers, by the way, teachers, if you're talking in a lesson, it does with the student in conversation, it doesn't mean you're not providing value, because you only often find out these problems in conversation, right?
100%. It's by asking the questions, not on, asking the student about what they're thinking and what they believe is going on and what their plan and what their strategy is.
Yeah.
And, is there a reason why they're doing something a particular way?
Yeah. That's it. And it does take, if you're going the Socratic route, which is where you basically sit there as the completely ignorant party and you question someone about what they do in a way that's just, I've got no preconceived ideas. You just tell me how it plans out, and I just keep asking questions until there's no way out, but there's an answer there, and that's how it
Mm-hmm.
works. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that takes 5 or 10 minutes. And when it
Yes.
comes to support, often when we get those terms that singers just think are taken as read, everybody does this, don't they? We don't need to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
You often have to spend 5-10 minutes getting those thoughts out of someone's head, and then you realize, oh, they're trying to support everything. That's why some of these registers won't come, or some of these sounds won't come. So I feel, you always have to support the voice. That may or may not be true, but I think posture plays a role. And again, there is no perfect posture, but if your body position doesn't afford your breath system to calibrate itself around your voice, then you will feel like you'll need to do something to support it. You may need to place an effort on something. So posture allows you to think less about support.
Yes. Yes.
Right, because it
Yes.
allows things to work. And then in more I guess more extreme activities of, top end opera singing probably is one of those activities. Incredibly high belting may require a postural or support strategy, because now it's getting out of the realms of sort of, I guess, voice use. It's getting into more extremes of voice use, so you tend to have to get a tiny bit more strategic.
Yes. And I know that with my students, sometimes when I say, what are you doing to support the voice? It just gets them to do something. When they're just not doing anything, it's just like, just bloody well do something. But I find that what works really well is a primal approach.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That is my favorite way to get everything to kick in terms of support, when they come from that need to communicate.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
will often take care of the support real quick, smart.
Yeah. Yeah. And primal sounds is one aspect I find people use. In Lesac, there's what are called energies, NRGs. So I tend to use those as well. Like one of them is called radiant, which is where you're like, oh, I'm just a little bit shaky. I just want to open that present right now because I'm so excited to get it. Like in terms of support, that's often how I use it. And that, once again, what you've pointed out there, which is really cool, is it's not about mechanics as much as it is about intention.
Yes.
And without intention, you can't just place a mechanical resolution to replace intention. Intention has to be the first thing. And if there's any extra requirements for support, that might be mechanical. It might be, yes, it works well when my belly comes in slightly. That's great, because that's only a small amount of conscious effort, whereas intention or character organizes the other 99 muscles that you couldn't possibly on your own.
Exactly. And I love too using not only like a call for help when I'm trying to get them to access their belt sound, but also using different emotions. How does it feel if you sing this really sad song, but you've just won the lottery? Right?
What
Or
a dichotomy. I love
yeah,
it.
or what if you were really angry? You get angry sometimes, surely. So
Yeah.
how would that feel in this song? So I love playing with all those different emotions as well. And a lot of things do take care of themselves, but it's then
Yeah.
how do we make them permanent, you know? But
Yes.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a good
Love it.
starting point without controlling and manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay,
Agreed.
myth number 8. This is a show and tell verse. So I call this show versus tell, because the myth was you need to tell someone how to do something for them to be able to do it. Now, I would like to argue that some teachers would say, no, you have to be able to show them and model for them to know how to do it. And me being a singing teacher, that I'm teaching pop singers who are doing all these crazy melismas, I can tell you, I can't do them myself, but I can
Mm-hmm.
teach other people to do them.
Yeah, and that is the argument. That is the argument. I would say, without using this as a reason to not develop yourself as a better demonstrator, because that is, and to be fair, not being able to demonstrate some of the more rudimentary functions in singing is half the reason why singing teachers are crippled with imposter syndrome. Is because they don't feel they can demonstrate to the level they know they probably need to. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out in the open. But
Yes.
but the thing about showing someone is, again, like, I'll show you, you do it, has been again a model of singing teaching for centuries.
Yes. Master apprentice.
Yeah, but then for centuries, especially if we consider classical, the aesthetics were all very narrow. Like, you had a very specific set of aesthetics to fulfill in order to be credible in that thing. So then I do feel like a little bit of I'll show you, you repeat probably works better in that environment. But when you bring in contemporary styles and individuality and pop, we have to leave some room for people to figure out a unique way of doing some things, and that's what creates them. That's how I when I first taught by demonstration, obviously I created about 10 mini fucking me's, right?
Oh, another
Oh,
night.
sorry.
But yes, but 100%. You know what? I could not agree with you more. I've been to a Stedfords when I used to teach K to 12 year, like the school children, right? K to 12. And they would enter a Stedfords. You could tell who their teacher was by their sound.
Yeah.
And I'd go, yep, that's from that. She's from this studio. Yep, she's from that studio, because they sounded like their teacher. And so for me, I try to avoid singing as much as possible. I do when if it's necessary, I will, or to demonstrate, something that we're introducing in terms of an exercise, or a warm up that they've never done before. But I won't, unless I have to, I don't sing, because I don't want them mimicking me. And that we all learn, we are hardwired to learn by emulating and mimicking. And I don't want my students to take on the voice of quite a mature person when they're I'm at least 35. So, and they're only 18. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And when it comes to teaching style, it's good for you to be able to do, like, oh, here, here's how it might sound, but then you'd have a whole bunch of, say, examples of other singers on Spotify that do this same thing in different ways, so that you can sort of dilute your sound amongst a whole bunch of things, but still be able to help them if they get stuck. So you still have an ability to do it in some level. And also, when someone is struggling with something, this is also an important part. So you don't need to clear up every problem that the singer encounters. Again, demonstrating is pretty good, but when singers struggle, teachers jump in quite often, or singers also say, "Can you just show me? Because I just need someone to tell me how to do it." And that's cool. That might be sometimes the personality of the student. They're just like, "You tell me, I'll do it," and that's the way I'm going to navigate this process. And we could get in a great big conversation about going, well, you wouldn't have that much uniqueness if that's how we did it. You'd probably just end up sounding like me. And they're like, don't care. I just want to be able to sing the song. Right. And then you're like, okay, that's the student's goals. That's like, okay, you just want to sing the song. I'll do more demonstration then. It's not your desire to be selling records, but the person who wants to sell records or be signed, and who wants to learn in the most sustainable way. So when someone figures something out for themselves, it sticks in their memory. But if you show them, they have to remember what you said. Discoveries stay with them, but information leaves them real quickly. So every time I'm telling someone how to do something, it pains me inside, because I'm thinking, this is just going to rely on your memory now. And I don't want it to rely on your memory. I want your nervous system to go ping, oh yeah, and take it into that nervous system, into that automation, automaticity. And self-discovery is one of the greatest ways to do that. So as a teacher, I feel like I need to facilitate the discovery of it rather than always instruct it. And that's another reason why I don't feel we just need to show everybody everything all the time. We've got to leave it that.
Yes. Well, we have to allow our students to become autonomous. And I think when they learn process, what is the process to achieving the desired sound? How do we get from this point to that point? And teaching them basic process, not something where you have to sit at a piano and play all these complicated scales. It could be, how about you're having trouble with this verse? Let's trill the verse, or let's use a straw. Let's do straw phonation through the verse. So we have all these different processes and layers, and they start to remember those. And I think that's helping them to learn that, hey, there are times where I'm going to need help. There's times my singing teacher's not going to be there, but I've learned these different processes, and one of them will work, or will hopefully work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're giving them all kinds of tools like that to experiment.
Yes.
If you're on your own and you want to try this out, remember those 4 kind of various
steps.
voice qualities we did? Yeah, try and see
steps.
which one works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Autonomy is a big one, but sometimes singers they don't want the autonomous route. They want the instructed route. So we're sometimes at the mercy of how the singer feels they need or want to learn. It's a funny one.
Yes, and they all learn differently. Some of them want it explained, some of them want to hear it, some of them want to see you demonstrating what it looks like on a body, So, yeah, some of them need to feel it themselves. I find most of them need to feel it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, myth number 9, beauty as a vocal goal. So we all wanting to achieve beauty as singers. Or how important is beauty?
And beauty is applauded as well.
Yeah, but is beauty not subjective?
It is subjective, although as a culture, we do agree often on what we consider to be beautiful. Collectively, there would be more beautiful voices that have more purity. And again, they would come into gender stereotypes as well. Especially, you know, how sort of born female voices would be viewed in terms of beauty, and the rougher they are, the less beautiful they are labeled. But yet we know that, you know, in all kinds of voice qualities, rough, smooth, cracky, broken, stable, there's a lot of beauty to be discovered in those in terms of expression, the storytelling. That's not what beauty is. But this idea of beauty and purity especially, it does lead singers to go down that route, because also what people say quite often, I hear this so often, they go, oh, somebody comes up to me and says, your tone is just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. But what they express is like, oh, but people, they don't sort of buy my records. Nobody's buying it, because when it's this beautiful tone that somebody of a traditional mindset really appreciates and applauds you for, pardon me, they lean into that. But to create a lot of smoothness and legato and eliminate all of the non-beautiful things, it can be very boring, and it is very boring.
I
It's
find
a very
it
boring sound.
excruciatingly boring.
Yeah, right.
To be
It
fair,
doesn't have it.
To be fair, yeah. And I mean, as CCM singers, we do often create unconventional sounds to express a particular emotion, or as part of our storytelling, or it could be our signature sound. And I mean, I've heard people saying, you know, Bob Dylan, he's a great singer. He's got a beautiful voice. And I'm thinking, there's nothing beautiful about it. He's a great storyteller. His lyrics are amazing. But would you say he has beauty of tone? No. But
Yeah, right.
subjective, right? It's
yes,
subjective.
absolutely.
Would you say Mick Jagger has a beautiful voice? No, but then other people go, oh, he's got a beautiful voice. Because they believe, you know, so they get the whole thing. What is beauty? It's very subjective.
Absolutely. And it's net beautiful is the whole thing that I'm listening to, speaking to me on a certain level with a message. And does it contain that? That's the beauty. It's like the net effect. Let's not always just place the voice as being the sole provider of the beauty, or the singer feeling like that's their job. I have to carry everything. It's like, no, everything does that. Even the melody is beautiful. You don't need a voice to carry a melody to get beauty, because it's often written into the melody and the intervals and the chords. So you have that. But I think as well, when it comes to beauty, and if somebody has been lauded for the beauty, again, this is my experience of it, is functionally that leads the singer to use their voice in a very, I guess you could call it, balanced way. It's not extra loud. It doesn't go breathy. Everything's very even. And when you take that as a muscle pattern, or I guess you could call it muscle memory, for them to do other tasks like calling and like going breathy, they find it impossible. It's like everything they sing out has that same evenness, and it's a complete head wrecker to do other sounds. So, you know, the endeavor for beauty, it's not just a sound thing, it's not just an interest thing, but functionally it encourages the system to do a lot less, and they find it so hard to get out of that, to become more expressive.
I know you can tell when someone is focusing on beauty of tone rather than the storytelling. I can see it on my students' faces. So I will ask them at the end of their singing a particular song, what were you thinking about when you were singing that? Oh, I was thinking about my voice and how I sounded. And I'll say, well, where's the storytelling in that?
Yeah.
So beauty, that trying to achieve beauty of sound, it does get in the way of storytelling and of being vulnerable and expressing yourself and sharing the story that you have to share with the audience.
Yeah. So do you find also it's tempo? I often find the singers who are focusing on that are just always on the ballads, because it gives them enough time to manage their voice.
Well, my singers are quite a mixed bag. And the ones that do come in and they say that they're inspired by Adele and they love the big ballads, the first thing I do when it comes to, because I have to choose one of their repertoire pieces, I'll give them something totally different. I'll find an artist that isn't a big belter, someone like Georgia Smith or I don't know, I can't even think. There's a lot of singers out there that are not the big belters, and they use all parts of their voices. So I introduce those songs and those artists to them. So they start to explore the full range of their voices. They don't put limitations on their voices. That's one thing I really work on, getting them into the mindset that this is a safe space for you to make any sound. Some of them you're going to love. Some of them you may hate and you'll never want to use again. There's no wrong or right. Let's just see what your voice is capable of. Use this space as a science laboratory and let's experiment. And if we have a failed science experiment, so be it. Because guess what? No one's going to die in here. You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
like that. Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah. So let's explore, let's play, let's just go through the motions and see what happens. Let's just see what ends up happening. What's the worst case scenario? You have a blowout. Well, I hate to tell you, I sometimes have them when I teach, because I get really excited and I'm still talking and then I go to sing, but I haven't kind of given myself that moment to go, okay, now sing.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, I say to them, you'll hear me have a blowout from time to time. I don't really care. That's okay. No. But this is the place to do it.
Yes.
You don't want to do it on stage, but you are perfectly fine to explore and have fun and make those mistakes in here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's great, isn't it? When you get that singer sometimes who just kind of, the exercises get progressively weirder and weirder because they're trusting you more and more. And then you bring out these kind of funny sounds and they just stop for a minute and go, seriously? Is this getting posted on the internet or something? Because this is just insane.
Yeah.
But you gradually see your ability to build up those, as you call them, the science experiments or the whatever, over time. Yeah, and then you find something inevitably amazing, don't you?
I know it. And even the students themselves, the things that they discover about their voices by letting go of all those shackles. Either a prior teacher has told them something, or someone laughed at them at school when they were at school singing at the school assembly and they hit a wrong note. Anyway, it's very interesting. We are so messed up as singers. We truly are. We are the biggest, most messed up lot of people.
No, do you know what? I think, Marissa, what you've said there, is I can understand why you say that, because I've had a similar experience to you, which is when you've worked in a institution where all disciplines are on the same diploma. Do you have it where they kind of all come in and at the end of the week they all play the songs? So the guitarists have been doing guitar diploma and you see them all together and there's always variation, but the singers versus the guitar, like the guitarists always really want to be the singers, really to be,
they think they're the lead instrument.
Yes. It's always the same. So we get to see, don't we? We get to see how certain groups of people or certain groups of instruments all seem to behave like as personalities. Don't want to pigeonhole them, but there is some similarity. So I think I feel you as to why we kind of like think that way.
I know. Okay, myth number 10, because we're going way over time. So I'm thinking this is going to end up being a double episode. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because we're nearly there. All right. Myth number 10, Chris. CCM singers don't need resonance. Only classical singers do.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one,
Oh,
isn't it?
oh.
That's a good one. It's not true, but
No,
but
it's
it is
not
a good
true.
one.
It is a good one. Yes,
Yeah.
because, and I've heard this from a very highly acclaimed singing teacher that CCM singers don't need resonance because we're mic'd. Now, to remain, even for sustainability, we use twang. It may not be the same resonance as a classical singer, but I know that twang for me is my lifesaver.
Mm.
Even when I speak, even when I'm teaching these long days, even in my speaking voice, there's that little bit of twang and it's helping me. It's my preservation. So that's my version of like what I think resonance is for CCM singers. What's yours?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's different resonance strategies, and resonance is a driver of the vocal folds vibration. So the less resonance that singers can take advantage of, the more the other parts of the voice or the system have to pick up the slack. So they'd have to probably use breath more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
The vocal cords may need to squeeze together a bit more to return the energy that isn't been gained by a resonance of some kind. So we do labour the rest of our voice if we don't have something on the resonance side to support it. But
Yes.
in classical singing, if that person is lumping in the word resonance to the singer's formant strategy, which is a very specific strategy in classical that allows you to be heard over a 65-piece orchestra with no
Yes.
microphone.
And heard lots
Yes.
of goats. Don't forget
Yeah,
the
and heard lots.
goats.
Yeah, so many uses for it.
Yeah.
So many uses. Town crier. Oh, yay! But
Mm.
no, so that resonance strategy would certainly not agree so well with a condenser mic, and a 10K rig. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Um, it's
Yeah.
not going to do well with that. But twang is a form of resonance strategy for sure. And even vowels. All singers know that certain vowels work better on certain pitches, and occasionally that's because of biomechanics a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, it's because it reorganizes resonances in a way that gives that voice energy and then doesn't labor the rest of the system.
Yes. Yes.
So, and if we talk about placement, contemporary singers as well as classical singers all describe placement because they're describing interactions and reflections of energy that you could describe as resonance. So we can't have placement or those sensations if we don't leverage resonance in some way. The thing about resonance as well, I find, which is important to say, is if you resonate really, really strongly, if you choose a vowel or a resonance strategy that is designed to really put a lot of energy into the system,
Mm-hmm.
then that has to be balanced with the effort that the vocal folds make. For example, if you put a really strong glottal onset onto
Mm-hmm.
a very powerful resonance strategy, your chances of getting injured go up quite strongly,
Sure.
because the force of the vocal folds coming together is strong, but then the effect of resonance is to increase the intensity of the vibration of the vocal folds as well. So if you put them both together, it's very easy for you to overcook it. So let's say you were a classical teacher who's dealing with a singer who was singing rock with glottal onsets. If you did place your resonance strategy upon that, you would absolutely cook that singer within a few weeks probably, or even in that moment. So it is important to say that if resonance strategies are going to be transferred over from one genre to another, they can't just come as they are. Other things, especially vocal fold closure, also need to be altered. Or if you want to keep the glottal onset, you probably don't need a resonance strategy that's going to maximize the amount of resonance possible. It needs to be enough resonance to sustain the voice, which is why twang is good, because it adds energy in nice ways, but it doesn't put too much amplitude of that energy in it. It supports it in just the right intensity, so you can use it with those more closed sounds, those more reducted sounds.
Exactly. No, I love that. Okay, this one here, I posed the question in a Facebook forum not so long ago. So I put the question in. I read the first couple of responses. One was yours. And then because I don't go to social media very often, I don't know what happened after I left the building. But it was mix is a register. So
yeah,
this is one of the biggest debates, and it's such a buzzword. We talked about some of the buzzwords, and it is a massive thing. And I feel part of what people believe mix to be even varies by continent. What some Americans believe mix to be, that I think they believe it to be head voice, like with heaps of twang. And then what people from the UK believe it to be is different. And then there's people that just don't think it's a thing at all, because you can't put head voice and chest voice in a blender and press start and blend them together. And my feeling is that we're always mixing at some level. There's always a blend of the TA, the CT, but I know it goes beyond that. But I feel that we're always blending.
Yeah, and that I think it's a difficult argument to have. Not that we were arguing, a difficult conversation to have. Is because there's the perceptual aspect. So I think, without getting too deep into the sort of mechanics of it, perceptually, someone can throw those two registers into a blender. They can think, I'm going to have 50% chest, 50% head. And in some people, that will generate what you might see as something that would sound quite chesty, but travel really high.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly what's going on at the vocal fold level, but it could be a useful lie to the singer. And that's quite possible. So when you take in perception, you might even get a singer, let's say, that might be like a really high voice, like a soprano, and that singer may well see mix as chest voice all the way up, because their vocal fold physiology is different. Their feeling of it is different, and they may think, I just sing one voice all the way to the top, whereas a baritone or somebody with a much deeper voice, they often describe of having to let go a lot more. Like, I feel it more of a change, more of a, I have to drop some weight from the bottom for this to be possible. And so those two singers describe polar opposites. The baritone might say, yeah, it's my head voice, but just with more. And the soprano may say, my chest voice goes all the way to the top.
Yes.
And that can be a vocal fold physiology thing, that and coordination, and even just the size of the vocal folds, that allows those two singers to experience those two things so differently. So it almost doesn't matter what goes on underneath. So we can't speculate as to what the mechanics are. If we all discover that the mechanics do something, and let's say we're not going to, because we can't stick needles in vocal folds without breaking ethical rules, we're probably never going to know until we develop something. So, but if we were to know, that information would probably either corroborate the soprano or corroborate the baritone, or create a brand new something in the middle. And that may get those two people to second guess what they're even doing, right? Which was working in the first place.
Yes.
And now everybody's going towards functional truth, but don't worry about functional truth. It's really about imagery that you create for yourself, and that you can help somebody create for themselves. So I think with mix, when we discuss it, we've got to be careful that it doesn't change what people do if it's working, because that's the problem with, I think, the 20th century. We got so much knowledge about how stuff worked. We took that forward into voice lessons, especially about placement. Can't place your voice. It's true, you know, science tells us whatever, and then we realize, oh, actually no, you may not explain it like that, but it still works as a concept. So with mix, I think we've got to worry about that. But the way that mix is being described these days, it could be an acoustic mix. It could be that the way a vowel is shaped changes energy in the system, and when energy lowers a little bit in the system, we may perceive that as a register change.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's just a sort of a stepping down of how much energy in the system in a distinctive moment, which we perceive as a register change. But you may still be in chest voice from bottom to top, but it's the vowel that gives you this sense of energy change that we attribute to being more heady when it may not be. And vice versa. So the combination of all of these things makes mix an ambiguous pain in the neck again.
Yes. I don't use the word in my lessons, to be honest, because I don't want to confuse students. You know, I don't say, oh, let's use mix. I just try and get them to create the sound in a healthy, sustainable manner that they're not then getting in their heads about what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. You lead with the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if it turns out that the conversation would be, let's say that I'm a big fan of using intensity instead of saying, oh, make it more mixy. It's more like, okay, we're just not going to do that with quite as much gusto, and that's probably going to get close. Maybe we'll use a bit more vibrato, and it might sound a bit closer to a register that a director might say, oh yeah, the more mixy one. So sometimes I do clarify it with my students because they're directed to be more mixy on the West End.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know, and if they don't understand what it is, they can't fulfill the direction.
Yes.
So
yes, 100%.
That's the reason why I would use it more often. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't work with any musical theatre singers, so I don't have to, well, not currently anyway, so I don't have to worry about it. It's
not with the pop singers who are just master of their own destiny, and it comes as it comes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're at the last one, Chris. We've got there.
What a journey.
And you know what? With this one, we're going to address the elephant in the room. See, you thought they're only goats.
I'd rather goats because they're a little less dangerous, aren't they?
Okay, but there's an elephant in the room here.
Okay.
So, myth number 14. You must have classical lessons if you want to sing any style of music.
Yeah, that's probably the oldest one, isn't it? I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest
That's
of all the
myths.
myths.
Elephant.
Yeah. And that is, again, that is a myth. Again, we're labeling it as the myth. But I know there's loads and loads of classical teachers out there who would also understand that, classical singing is not the standard or the gold standard. And what classical singing could do for somebody is it may encourage them to use their voice in different ways. It may encourage them to have a very strong sound and extend range quite often if you're going to be working on certain types of repertoire. But that form of training and those skills are generated in other genres.
Oh, sorry, hang on.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
What is going on?
Have you got a pet?
Yeah, my cat is acting weirdo, as though there was something like a cockroach or something down here. Sorry, he was making me paranoid. He didn't stop.
No worries.
It's okay, well, do you want to back? We'll cut that out. Just cut back to wherever you wish. Yeah,
cool. But those skills are also attainable in other forms of training. It's not that classical singing generally did them, but when singers, let's say a singer, let's say they started in contemporary music and they took some classical lessons. If they got better, great. That's because they took some lessons, they got some function. You could attribute that to the genre of classical, but it's probably not it. But quite often what you've said about giving singers very different things is cross-training is very much like a really valuable thing for singers to do. And let's say that if you got better from classical training and it made your contemporary sound better, it's not necessarily that the classical training was the gold standard. It was that you used your voice in a more various way during that period, which is only good for an instrument. Variety avoids getting stuck in one thing. And if we get stuck in one thing, we might be really good at that, but the tendency to get more tight or be susceptible to injury and fatigue, they grow if you use your voice in a narrow way. So sometimes I feel like classical singing gets attributed the gold standard, but all it provided somebody with was cross-training, was a variety of tasks. And that's why I think musical theatre generates some absolutely incredible functional singers, is because they don't usually rest in one thing. They have to be old, young, angry, sad, high, low, classical, contemporary. Arguably, that might not let them arrive on the most stylistic of identities, right? So that's the trade-off. But it does allow them to use their voice in such various ways that they can actually perform many shows a week and sing really incredible stuff because they have that various training. Contemporary singers who teach pop could easily bring that into their singing lessons in ways that don't involve any classical repertoire or any repertoire even that steps out of that singer genre. You could still sculpt that training. At the end of the day, classical singing has a longer history of study, so it's obviously going to have probably, I guess, more techniques at the end of the day to apply to singers, but that's just from its long history. We could bring that information into contemporary and make it fit. It's just that contemporary vocal coaching has probably only really been around for about 70 years, as opposed to hundreds, 400 years. So, you know, we just need to make sure that all the information goes in a pot and that it becomes a pot of style agnostic information. It's not about classical. It's just classical has contributed a lot of the knowledge and information over a longer period of time. It doesn't make it better.
Yes. When I was in the US, I did some teaching over there, and I taught at 3 different locations, universities over there, where I was working and doing master classes and delivering presentations to classical people, because they only had a classical voice department, but I taught CCM. And so I had classical teachers in the room. I had members of NATS, the local chapter members turned up. And it was so interesting watching their faces as I taught and as I delivered information. And they're going, wow, we do that. You do that too?
Oh, right. Lovely. Some common ground.
They were finding common ground. And also that basically my philosophies were the same. And just because I teach CCM, I am still a legitimate teacher. And I still have certain principles and certain things that I teach that classical people teach, but it's just the output is different. So we're working towards a different output, but a lot of the steps are still the same. We're still looking for a lot of the same things in terms of, like, still got to breathe, still got to place, still got to support, whatever it is we've talked about tonight. I'm sure all classical teachers do it too, but we're just looking for a different sound. The aesthetic is different, but we are still teaching singing and still teaching the instrument. Good singing is good singing. Efficient singing is efficient singing. So sustainable singing is sustainable singing, irrespective of style.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of the same as you, because many texts are classical. A lot of the experimentation of techniques and things I've learned over the years will be majority classical based. But the experimentation and smushing it with other forms of information allow us to either discern what's going to be useful in the pop world,
exactly,
or what's close but needs to be modified. Yeah, that's nearly it. That's going to be, and so we can thank classical for that, for its long history of being able to provide a lot of observation. And classical, we can't forget as well, has gone through many changes. Let's say before the invention of like laryngoscope and before Garcia and all of the industrial age, classical singing was very much like how singers do pop these days, which is very intuitive, not based around mechanics, because they weren't really on that anatomical they weren't dissecting bodies at that point in time. They weren't just looking at stuff in the throat through a mirror. They didn't get tainted by biomechanics, and they did a lot of it through primal expression, just being physically robust and all those things.
Yes.
So there was a time in classical, from what I can see of the history anyway, where that probably would have transferred to pop much better than all of this mechanical 20th century stuff that seems to be like, no, you've got to keep your larynx low manually and all that stuff. It didn't quite, and even breathing was much simpler before biomechanics got involved in opera. It was a whole self breath. It wasn't a mechanical this rib and that rib and twist that one and pull that in. It wasn't any of that. So it's so classical has almost taken the hits for us on that as well. But how it then gets permeated out by I guess purists in some way. It's the purest version of that classical teacher that actually almost demonizes some of the stuff that goes on in contemporary. But
exactly,
fortunately, I see them as the more the minority these days, because I think the education is going out, and the acceptance and the understanding and and like you say, the common ground is growing.
It is. And, I felt very privileged to be a part of that when I was teaching. I honestly was so grateful that I was able to impart what I knew, and that they could actually relate to it. And they saw all the similarities. So it was really, really cool. Now, we're winding up, Chris. This has been way too much fun.
Thank you for having me again. Yeah, I always enjoy it.
Yes, and I love all the information. You are truly such a knowledgeable singing teacher and vocal coach, and I have the utmost respect for you. I think you're doing great work, and I know you're sharing it through your teacher training. So tell us where that's at the moment.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you too, by the way. At the moment, yeah, I've got a couple of things going on. Teacher training, I run through a company called teachvoice.com, which is where vocal coaches, primarily who are working in contemporary, or quite often they've been classical but are moving into more contemporary fields, if you like. I've created a big program, a membership for them, but there's a free community where I help people with questions, everything we would talk about sort of today. There's a lot of conversation in there, but then there's a program of teacher training that I do for those guys that allows them to sort of not go through a course, but rather just dip into these knowledge gaps that they have, because I think we have to acknowledge vocal coaches come from such different places of either education, conception, style.
Yes.
To run them through a course doesn't make any sense. It's got to be like, okay, we have conversations. They take assessments into their singers, and then the assessments identify where the gaps are in their own knowledge, and then they kind of pick in. So I have a
Very
great time
cool.
with about 100 teachers at the moment are in the program. Um,
100.
yes,
Wow. That's amazing. Well
it's
done.
thank you. No, it's really
Yeah,
great, and they are so cool.
congratulations.
They really help each other as well. We have 2 group calls every week, so actually, some of those teachers have been in the program for 3 years. So actually, I've got to know a lot of them really, really well,
Hmm.
and so we do all kinds of collaboration, and they almost mastermind it at times. You know, there's a lot of input and expertise that can come in on those group calls, as well as specialist information that I might bring as well.
That is amazing. So, where can people find out about this training that you're offering?
Well, you can go if you're. This is either for singers or teachers. So if you go to teachvoice.com/email,
Hmm.
what you can do is if you want to find out more about it, you can enter in your email there. It will say, "Are you a singer? Do it here. Are you a vocal coach? Do it here." But whichever one you add or place your email in, you'll get an email straight back with a free piece of training.
Hmm.
Just to allow you to kind of like experience something different, but also that will give you information as well on what my various pieces of training contain, the features that they have, and the outcomes that you can expect from them.
Amazing. So, we will add the links to your training in the show notes to make things easier for anyone that's just missed that.
Thank you.
So, what are you up to next? I believe there could be some overseas travel. Am I allowed to say?
Yes, you are. Yeah, I'm going to. I don't have the exact details right now, but if you're listening in 2024, that is the year, isn't it? I always forget.
It is.
Oh, goodness
I
me.
know, right?
Flying by. Okay, I'm still writing 2023 occasionally. So if it's 2024, then in August, if you keep an eye out for my mug on the singing, wherever you get your singing information, I'll be there in Brisbane, in Australia in August, which is going to be absolutely brilliant. Roughly about the sort of 22nd or 21st. And it will be a rather large, sort of almost like singing festival where there's loads of training, but it's going to be quite big, applicable to singers, coaches, voiceover artists, and also
Amazing.
some of the medical fraternity as well.
That's incredible. Wow. Okay. Well, anyone that's here in Australia, look out for Chris's mug in August.
Emblazoned. I'm hoping it's going to be on billboards, but I doubt
Oh,
I'll be lauded up that much.
I'm sure, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Have you seen this man? Please
Yeah.
call this number.
Yes, wanted, dead or alive. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It has been such a joy. Honestly, I love
Thank
hanging
you.
out with you. Doesn't even feel like it was an interview tonight. It was too much fun for an interview. But no, I truly appreciate you and all the work that you're doing, and your contribution to our singing voice community is unbelievable. It's so valued. So love your work. Keep it up and see you next time. I'm looking at that mug.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great to be a part of the community and offer something whatever I can, I'm here to offer it. So thanks for having me once again.
Thank you. Bye,
Cheers.
Chris.
Bye
Bye.
bye.